Steven, man, thank you so much for coming on the show here today. Really excited to have you on. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Stephen Webster. I'm CEO of a company called ASENSEI. We're 10 years old. We've been
Wow.
around for a while.
Yeah.
I'll just give you the quick intro, and I'll let you dig in wherever is interesting for you and for your audience.
Yeah.
Really two parallel threads in my life kind of weave together to bring me to where I am today. One is technology, and the other sport.
Yes.
I've always been in tech. My dad was I was the first kid in my town to have a computer.
Oh, cool.
I was the kid that the teachers would send for when the computer in the school wasn't working. So I've always been in tech, which took me to tech at university. I studied computer science and electronics. I've been a chip designer and a software engineer. And I've, built and sold software companies and worked for companies like Adobe and Microsoft before ASENSEI. But the more interesting part is, like many of us, I've just always been kind of nuts about sport and, I call it fitness by osmosis, by playing sport and being active. I grew up playing a ton of sports, and I'm from Scotland originally. So like lots of football, soccer. I actually played a lot of hockey, ice hockey and street hockey. I loved water sports like windsurfing, like every weekend was on the water. But I was disproportionately passionate about martial arts, judo, then jiu-jitsu, and then karate. And so at university, I wanted to compete in a sport. And so I chose karate. I competed, I captained. I ended up coaching during and after graduation. So I coached University of Edinburgh to 10 consecutive national championships. And so that's where this deep passion for coaching comes from. So smoosh these two things together into a cauldron and out pops someone that's passionate about sport coaching and passionate about tech and has always wondered, when will we be able to teach sport in a digital way? Like how as a coach can I reach more people and teach more people in a way that is as good as if I was in the room with them? And, I'm sure we'll unpack it, but that's what ASENSEI is set out to solve. And is that the short version? Or
Yeah. No. That's a short version. So I would love, can you just give us an overview? What is ASENSEI? How is it used? When I first started learning about it, I don't know if you saw the original Total Recall. But I just remember Sharon Stone. No, not the second one, the original one with Arnold. But I just remember Sharon Stone's getting taught like tennis lessons. And I'm a kid at this point. I'm like,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I wonder how long until we can do something like that. So I would love to just hear more about the product and what it does.
Yeah, well, I'm going to totally steal that now. I always talk about the Matrix, but I know Kung Fu. Imagine if a machine could understand what you're doing and how well you're doing it. That's kind of the quest we set out on. So, we've made human movement something a machine can understand, right? I think we're all familiar with speech recognition at this point. Everybody's
Sure.
It's just normal that we can, speak to our TV or speak to our speakers or speak to our laptop or, if you drive a Tesla, you can't find the windshield wipers, you speak to the car. It's like, turn the wipers on, turn the wipers off. It's just become this totally natural interaction that my son is 10 and he expects to be able to, speak to the stuff that he doesn't type searches in Google. He presses the button and speaks his search into Google.
Yeah, sure.
So speech recognition, it's just a good analogy for people to understand what we do because, 50% of communication is nonverbal, right? The rest of it is like, what are we doing with our body? And so that's the problem that we've set out to solve is let's teach machines to see us and to understand what we're doing and understand how well we're doing it. So let me cut to the chase. We use the camera on a laptop, a smartphone, your TV, your connected fitness product that you might have, on your wall or on the floor. We just take that camera, we extract a 3D skeleton of you in real time. So in real time, whatever you're doing, we're seeing your skeleton in 3D. And then we're able to recognize what you're attempting to do. So it looks like you're trying to do a front squat, or it looks like you're trying to do a single arm kettlebell press, or it looks like you're rowing on a rowing machine. And once we've identified what you're trying to do, we can then train the machine to understand how well you're doing it according to someone's teaching syllabus. So Because I'm
Right.
sure everybody's got a different opinion on what's the best way to teach a front
Yes.
squat or what's the best way to do a reverse punch in karate. I can argue about that for years. There's my way and there's the wrong way. um,
Right.
and so, now we've recognized what you're doing through the camera. We've recognized how well you're doing it. Now the really hard part is like, well, how would a skilled coach intervene? Sometimes the best coaching is no coaching right now, like not to
Sure.
actually say anything, just let you get the movement pattern down. And then the next time we do that thing, it's like, hey, Mike, we're going to do roundhouse kicks again, but this time I really want you focusing on that pivot on your back foot, like heel facing the target, right? So something we saw might inform something we'll say. And so we call that coaching intelligence, and we do that as well. So, that's the underlying technology, but we're an ingredient in other people's products. So, we're working with, over 20 companies in fitness and in healthcare, digital first companies like Chris Hemsworth Center or Alter, companies that, never knew digital was coming, like Vertimax and PowerBlock, and then healthcare companies like physical therapy, our virtual PT. So they're taking our tech, they're putting it in their products, and suddenly we can deliver a digital experience where you're unsupervised by a human, but you're getting that kind of same level of interaction. I'll throw you a little bone. We also do a lot of work in brick and mortar, where instead of us coaching the athlete, we're making the coach in the room better. I call it the super coach, and maybe we can talk about that in a bit. But we're not from the school of like AI is going to replace coaches. I'm a coach, and I don't want to be replaced by AI, but I want to be the best coach I can be for the athletes in front of me.
Well, you literally just took the next question out of my mouth, because I'm sure that people that are listening are like, oh my gosh, this sounds great, except now I'm not going to have a job. And I feel like this is the one thing I bring to the table, right? Like I'm a coach, and is what you're creating designed to basically take over, and so we don't need a coach or a live human coach anymore.
Yeah, no, I'll give you some examples where I'm going to make you a super coach, right? Onboarding a new client or onboarding a new athlete. What do we do? Like, let's just think about, and this is where our technology came from. Is so often, if you were to jump onto one of our like internal calls, it's not a bunch of guys nerding out about AI and computer vision and machine learning and large language. Well, it is. We do those calls as well, but oftentimes it's like, when I used to teach groups of, martial artists on seminars, and I didn't know any of them and I hadn't seen them before, this is what I would do. I would do this warm up, because that way I could quickly figure out who's who in the zoo. And so we often kind of reminisce as coaches and think, what's the digital version of that? So, how do I make you a super coach? One is client onboarding, and when we warm up athletes, we're like, our antennas are up when we're warming up an athlete, right? It's like, oh my God, this guy can move and seems pretty limber and seems pretty good, but what's going on over there? I saw a little asymmetry there, or they're not very flexible in their hips. And or for me, like I've got really poor shoulder mobility right now, and you might be like, geez, I was going to give that guy a barbell and he's got no business having a barbell in his hands.
Right.
We'll do something else, and maybe we'll work on some extra movement prep in the shoulder. So we've got clients where they're warming their clients up in front of an iPad, and then that iPad is giving them information that they might have seen or they might not have seen. And it's also giving them suggestions for, like, this is the additional movement prep you might want to do. This is some programming you might want to mix in. So they've got this co-pilot, this co-pilot while they're coaching. And then, in the past, when I've, worked with a trainer or had a trainer, maybe come to my house like once a week, I'm supposed to be working out another 3 or 4 times a week, right?
Yes.
So that's another area where, instead of you maybe writing out programming and giving programming to your client, we've got customers now where you could use their technology that's got a Sensei inside of it. You could use their technology to say, here's your programming, and it's getting delivered by a Sensei. So if you forget how to do, like, can't remember how to do a Turkish get up, a Sensei will coach you through that movement part by part until you remember it again. Or are you doing a Turkish get up and you're forgetting like one of the points of performance, and you'll just hear the cue come in, and it might even come in your voice, depending if you're a what kind of coach you are on the platform. So we're working with customers who they're building digital tools to allow coaches to coach remotely or, coach a larger population of athletes. And our technology is going inside of those platforms. So that's not just a like set it and forget it experience, but you're actually, those same platforms in the world of physical therapy, they also tell the insurance company about adherence. Like,
Sure.
we're paying for your PT, but are you doing what they're asking you to do? Well, now we know, because
Right.
Essentially is tracking every rep and knows how well you're doing it. So,
That's
yeah,
cool.
long story short, we don't want to replace coaches. We want to open up bigger markets. And if you're a good coach, you should be a good coach beyond your zip code.
I really like that. I like that. Now, something else you mentioned that I'm really fascinated by is this idea of coaching models, right? So obviously you're in martial arts. How you coach something is different from somebody else. How I might coach a squat is different than how a powerlifter would. So how did you go about like sourcing that? And
Yeah.
is that like, can you diversify that? So it's like, you don't have to coach everybody the exact same way.
1,000%. I mean, it has to be like that, right? You
Yeah.
can't have a single source of truth for anything. So I'll give you a little bit of an understanding of how ASENSEI works under the covers. Not too much, not bore
Yeah,
you
sure.
too much, but we think a lot about the archetype of the movement, or to get philosophical, like what's the soul of the movement? Like is it a hinge? Is it a push? Is it a pull? Stick two rowing coaches with completely different opinions on how to coach rowing in a room and give them a beginner, and they're probably teaching the beginner the same way. The fundamentals don't change. It's the finesse more than the fundamentals that changes. So ASENSEI is trained to recognize what we call the lowest common denominator of the movement, the soul of the movement. Like, what's the thing that you and I probably wouldn't find much to disagree about and say, like, we both agree that was an honest attempt at a squat. Now, start putting, anyway, we agree with that part.
Sure.
We both agree that was an honest attempt at a squat. So that's what we recognize first. Next, we can train an infinite number of what we call nuances. And nuances are let's stick with squats because they're easy and probably everyone can, visualize one right now.
Sure.
If I was to ask you, like, Mike, you're coaching athlete squats, population from beginners to, power lifters, what's the kind of stuff you're looking for? You're going to be like, I want to see good depth. I want to see hinge at the hips. I want to see vertical shins. Maybe you don't. I want to see knees over toes. I don't want to see knee valgus. I'm looking at torso position. I'm looking for asymmetry as they go down. Do they go down one side first and then the other? And, the more and more you get into it, you're sort of on this like white belt to black belt progression of like how much detail. So every single squat ASENSEI sees every single one of those things, those nuances. That we train. And you give us a nuance we haven't taught ASENSEI to see it. It's like an hour to add it. It's like super quick process to say, Mike wants you to look for the knees being in this position at the top of the squat. So now we're spitting out all of those nuances as if they have no order of hierarchy. We're just saying, saw this one, didn't see this one, saw this one again, didn't see this one. Next up, we have this layer in the technology stack, which allows us to engage with the coaches in an organization. And that's called the coaching strategy. And the coaching strategy says, Mike, if you're coaching a squat, what's the order of importance? Like, if you want us to introduce these nuances one at a time, I'm guessing, but you'll probably be like, most importantly, I just want to see good hip hinge. And once I see hip hinge, I want to see hip depth. And once I see hip depth, coach out knee valgus. Then maybe we can talk about. And so you give us this hierarchy of importance. And if you've got another coach that wants to coach a different way, we'll coach to their hierarchy of importance. But we will either introduce the nuances in the order you prefer. And then the converse is also true. If we see them happening and we want to cue them out, like, don't do that. You'll tell us the order of importance. So if I see knee valgus and I see torso out of position, you'll tell me which one you want ASENSEI coaching out first. And so irrespective of whether it's something as simple as a squat, complex as a Turkish get-up, or it's a baseball swing or a baseball pitch, it's the fundamental idea of we look for the lowest common denominator of the movement, and then we can coach an infinite amount of performance metrics over time. Does that make sense?
That's so cool. No, that's perfect. And I'm assuming if you move it to different positions, it'll look for different things. Will it do that? Because, as a coach, you don't just stand in one position the whole time, right? Yeah. So maybe like, hey, I saw it from this side. Now I'm going to put it here. Can it do that? I mean, are you at that level yet? Or
I mean, I like the way you put it. I've never thought about it just quite like that before. But we're capturing a 3D skeleton, so we're
Right.
it's
Okay.
not just a 2D image.
Right.
We're literally uh, we know. Let's say I was turned away from you. Like we know. Like,
Sure.
imagine there's an XYZ coordinate on both of my shoulders.
Yes, I'm with you.
He is different on this one than this one, and we know how far away they are from each other. But the other thing, one of the other things we've added in our computer vision technology is we also know how far that shoulder is away from the lens of the camera that's looking at you, and that's nuts. I barely
Yeah,
on
that is pretty
my
nuts.
team have done that, but because we've done that, we now know: are you moving left? Are you moving right? We can do vertical jump assessment. We can do VBT training. We know how quickly your wrist is moving, so you don't need a
Sure.
sensor on a bar or a tendo unit. We can just track the vertical component of your wrist.
Wow.
So yeah, so that your question about does the coach need to move around? We're already I can show you the behind the scenes where I'm looking at you doing a squat on the camera. I can then show you your skeleton of the squat, but then I can rotate that any which way, and you can see yourself from the angles the camera is not
Oh
at.
yeah.
So we can kind of turn you around and look at you. We can't make light bend round corners. We haven't figured that one out. So if there's an occlusion, like if you're doing something, like you've got your back to the camera and you're throwing a jab, we're not going to see the jab, but
Sure.
but we're very we're very robust to like you don't have to face exactly the right way if you're off to the side or off to an angle. We still see what we're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Well, without giving away all the secrets, I would love to hear how this actually works because like if I'm thinking about motion capture, again, this is going to date me, but I remember being, in a lab in 2000 and you've got, the little markers on all the joints. It's like a tedious process. And at that, once you have that, it's 2D and then you got to go in and you got to tag them all. Like, how does this even begin to work? Because this is mind blowing to me.
Yeah. So at the very front end of the process is a technology called pose estimation. And so pose estimation is like deep AI. You're basically there are massive data sets of videos of human movement where people have laboriously annotated those videos to say that's a shoulder, that's an elbow, that's a wrist, that's a finger, that's a nose, that's an eye. And so you've got these labeled sets of videos
Okay.
that a machine has basically been trained on. And AI in a nutshell, or that kind of training at machine learning in a nutshell, is like once the machine has seen enough examples, it can start to predict examples that aren't annotated and say, I think the shoulder's there, and I think the nose is there, and I think the knee is there. It's, for anybody in AI that's watching, my apologies for bastardizing.
For this audience, that's probably just fine.
Yeah, I mean that would be a kind of like I took a few liberties there, but that's the basic premise of how a pose estimation works, which means you can then stand in front of a camera and get the XYZ components of all the different landmarks on the body. The depth training is the same thing. Like you give enough features and explanation to the machine about how far things are apart from each other or how far they are away from the camera, and the machine can start to infer them. And the wonderful thing about AI and machine learning is it just gets better over time with more and more data for that kind of problem. And so, I mean, we've worked with like expensive multi-camera Vicon motion capture systems that you'll see in a lab at Nike, and the reflective markers that you spoke about. Or we also did a lot of work in sensor-based technology where you're wearing a motion capture suit that's got inertial measurement units all over the body. And the wonderful thing is like the camera that we all carry around in our pocket on our phones is now kind of lab grade, which is insane.
Yeah. So how did this all, like, how did you even get started with this? Because again, you said 10 years. Like what was like the impetus? Like, hey, I'm going to bring all this together. I would love to hear just kind of the origin story. Maybe we should have started with that, but like, what made you think I'm going to create this thing, or was it? Did it even start as this, or did it just evolve into this over time?
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those movies where we want to do that effect now. Let's go back in time.
Yeah,
and scene. So, listen, as I alluded to earlier, as both a coach and an athlete, like I'd struggled with the problem of how do you teach someone when you're not there, and teaching at a university club and practicing at a university club. the problem's even more acute because you're not there 12 months of the year. Your students disappear for the summer and come back after the summer, but they want to keep training because they want to be black belts. And so, man, I've tried everything. And we're talking back in the 90s here. I'm like, here's a Diamond Rio MP3 player with a recording of me talking you through a kata so that you can kind of remember the sequence of a form or a kata.
Sure.
I literally had one of the first websites about karate on the internet. I built a website from a club when, building a website was coding by hand a website. And I would put my teaching syllabus on there and my training syllabus on there, put video on there eventually. So I've always had this, I want to learn from instructors that are on the other side of the world, and I want to teach students who are not available. So I'm framing that up as the origin is this is like a decades long itch that I've been unable to scratch. Now, fast forward, we're in the world of Nike Plus. It's like if you plug this thing into the bottom of your iPod and put this other thing in your shoe, we can track your run and you can challenge your friends. I'm like, okay, I'm into this. This is like sport and tech kind of coming together. Now I'm crowdfunding this little clothes peg that went on to be called Fitbit. And, now we're tracking our steps. I'm like, that's interesting. And now I'm in the world of could I put Fitbits on different parts of my body and motion capture? And could I, and I tried it and it didn't work very well. So now I'm at Microsoft and I'm working with the team. I'm not on the team, but I'm working with the guys that invented Xbox Connect. And I'm seeing all this, we were calling it natural user interfaces. Instead of a graphical user interface, the machine could speak to you and you could speak to it and it could see your form. And now we've got Xbox games, like Nike Xbox, and we've got yoga. And it's not very good, but it's a glimpse of the future. And then we launched Xbox Fitness. And I was at Microsoft around kind of 2012, 2013. So it's 10 years ago, but I'm getting a glimpse of AI. I had no idea it was going to be in the incarnation it's in today.
Right.
But I'm getting I had a very strong thesis 10 years ago that the direction we needed to move in a company was away from search engines and towards intelligent agents, these, digital entities that act on our behalf.
Yes.
And that is the theme of January 2025. If you're at all familiar with AI, it's everything's going to be an agent. And so, I was at Microsoft and I'm seeing wearable, I'm seeing motion capture, I'm seeing intelligent agents. And also I work at Microsoft. I'm an entrepreneur and it's a big company and I'm super frustrated how long it takes to get other people to see the world the way I see it. And and so at the top of Snowmass Mountain in Colorado, I was like, I'm going to quit. It's I wish I had this technology I keep dreaming of. I wish I had it for skiing. And so on the drive from Aspen to San Francisco for 2 days, I obsessively looked up domain names for the company I decided I was going to start. And ASENSEI was $1.99 bought in Bakersfield.
Wow. There you go. There you go. Okay. So in our emails leading up to the show, and then you mentioned it at the start, you talked about how ASENSEI is now working with trusted brands or established brands like PowerBlock and Vertimax. How does that work and how does that enhance what you're doing with those tools?
Yeah, so we have lots of different types of customers. Some of them are very digital. Center, Chris Hemsworth's fitness company, digital app that you download, and there's lots of other, there's Pelotons and there's ladders and, you've seen all of these apps, right? And so that's a class of customer who have a digital app where they're delivering digital fitness content. But imagine if that content was more interactive, if your reps were getting logged, if based on your previous performances, you could be given rep targets to hit, challenges. Maybe you haven't thought about this, stop to think about it, but every workout in these apps is time-based. They're not rep-based. There's no AMRAPs, there's no EMOMs because it doesn't know how many reps you've done. So we can really reimagine those digital apps. Sure. Then you've got the connected fitness products, right? The things that we bolt on our wall or the platforms that we stand on or the products that have got screens on them. And that's another class of customer for us, customers like Alter or I think we can mention, I would just stick with Alter, like a connected fitness mirror that's delivering strength training and mobility and yoga and combat classes. So that's another class of customers for us where they use our tech inside their product. But I'm going to go to the ones that you mentioned. I wanted to name those first. What I love about PowerBlock and what I love about Vertimax is there's not a power cable, a battery, or a Bluetooth connection in sight, right? These are what I call legacy brands. They're brands that, I'm sure there's like a lot of your listeners have PowerBlocks in their garage and they've had them for 20 years and they still work.
Yes.
The battery didn't run out.
Right, exactly.
Because there is no battery. And they're very analog products, right? And so, with both companies as an example, a companion app on the phone, just by setting your phone up in front of let's use Vertimax as an example first. Just by sticking your Vertimax phone in front of your Vertimax platform, what can you do now? Well, ASENSEI can watch you perform the jump on the platform. So I know that that's a countermeasure jump, or I know that that's hands on hips, repeated jump. Like, I know what jump you're supposed to be doing. And part of the earlier part of our conversation, I know what the lowest common denominator of that jump is so that I'll count it as a rep. I know all the points of performance. I mean, vertical jumps are a great example, coordination of the arm swing and, tucking. And so I know how to teach you or track how well you're doing that jump. But now with ASENSEI, I can measure your vertical. I can measure your center of mass from the floor. I can identify which joint is closest to the floor. So if I want to measure clearance, or if you're training for the combine and I want to see how high you reached, I can what joint was the highest point, or where did the finger go? So now I can coach you the jump. I can teach you the jump. I can watch you do it. I can see the nuances and the things that you could maybe do better. I can measure your vertical. I can make you do those things better, and I can see your vertical go up. So now it's cool. A closed loop system, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't have to add any tech to the platform. And for PowerBlock, I'd file this under, I've got no idea how this works. The team have done it. Is, on a PowerBlock, right? You put it on the floor, you change the pin, you pick it up. It's a different way.
Got a pair in my basement, man. That's what we started with at iFast, yeah.
Awesome. But if I was on screen right now with my PowerBlock and distant from the camera, it'd be very hard for you to tell, right? Is he got that at a 15 or a 20? I can't tell what he's riding at. ASENSEI can tell. So as well as tracking your form and tracking your reps, we've trained ASENSEI to recognize a PowerBlock Pro 50 and recognize that it's at 10 pounds or that it's at 15 pounds. So now we're able to track your reps. We can track the load you used. We can tell how well you did the exercise, what to coach you on it. And so now decisions about changing your programming, should I go up in reps, down in reps? Should I go up in load? Should I go down in load? Like, we're capturing all the data. Now, you'll tell me your protocol. Like, ASENSEI is not the source of truth here, but you're the one that's going to tell me, I want to see him in an 8 to 10 rep range. I want to see failure by 10 reps. And you'll tell me, does failure mean that you make the exercise progressively harder? Do you increase the reps? Do you increase the loads? Whatever your coaching strategy is, ASENSEI will surface the data in line with that strategy. And that allows the application, whether it's Vertimax or PowerBlock or someone else, to say, like, I know what to do and I know what Mike would do, so let's do that.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. Okay. So one thing that I'm always interested in, because I would like to think of myself as an advocate for trainers and coaches, right? We work really hard. We educate ourselves. I don't feel like we always get compensated at a level that we should as an industry, right? And so one thing I'm always trying to help people understand is alternative ways to increase their income, right? Because as well as I do, hey, especially if you're just a trainer, right? If you don't work, you don't get paid.
Right.
So what are some ways, because I'm sure you've thought about this, that we can leverage this kind of technology to help us add maybe an additional revenue stream?
No, it's a great question. I mean, because we're B2B, we're not necessarily selling to the trainer. Our customers are selling to the trainer, right? So that's kind of how I'm thinking about your question. But, what I would say is, let's say you work let's just pick some examples. You work in a big box gym and you're a trainer. And we know what that job is like, right? You're supposed to walk around the floor and try and find, acquisition of customers is hard, right? If go to your gym and tell them, you guys need to find out about these guys, ASENSEI, because here's what we can do. So, gyms and studios are, a target customer for us.
Yeah, yeah.
So for a gym, ASENSEI becomes a really good acquisition tool. So we have a use case that we call a smart warm-up. And a smart warm-up is station-based, or it can be station-based in a gym, which is like there's a screen there's a TV or there's a mirror or there's just a tablet. And you go up and warm up in front of that tablet. Let the tablet take you through the movement prep. So like, here's your 3 or 4 exercises I want you to warm up with.
Right.
It's doing that movement assessment, right? The whole
Yeah.
time it's like, now this is the person in front of that tablet right now had no intention to work with a trainer. They just showed up at the gym and they're warming up in the smart warm-up area. They're getting given a few tips. You should, form coaching or like add this exercise in. But that also creates a warm lead for the coach on the floor, right? The coach on the floor can now approach that person, or that person could be told, would you like 10 minutes with Coach Mike? Because we're seeing some hip flexion issues, and he can show you how to do a such and such stretch, or he can.
Right.
So you can think about technology as like bringing you kind of these warm leads, and it's not just like here's someone. It's here's someone with a problem that you can fix, and people like to get their problems fixed. So that's just one example. But yeah, I mean, I think similarly, if you work in a studio or a fitness studio, bringing in some of this kind of technology or offering your clients an at-home platform that has this kind of technology integrated, it's all about how do we deepen that relationship between the athlete and the coach, so that the coach is kind of seen as the source of truth. So that's kind of how we think about coaches is, we want to give them the information they need to better serve the client, and in turn to bring more clients to them.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking, as a business owner, anything I can do, well, number one, to get a better client outcome, right? Like that's huge. But number two, like just respecting the fact that, at 46, hey, I still prefer in many cases an analog program, right? Pen, paper, all that. But I also am having more and more of these conversations with these young athletes that I work with. Right. I'm like, hey, which would you prefer? Always on an app. Give it to me on an app. I want it on my phone. So that digital delivery, that's meaningful to a client base that, as you age, you don't necessarily think of as much, right? But that's just baked into their lifestyle. Like that's more comfortable to them.
No, 100%. And one of our partners, they're called Forte, Forte. I think it's go40.fit. They have a really interesting business model. They kind of allow any, they've got clients like UFC Gym and YMCA, but they've also got like, smaller boutiques where they're like, we'll allow you to deliver like a Peloton digital like experience, but we'll just put the camera in your studio and we'll make it really easy for you to deliver live streaming classes or workouts. It might be one-to-one, to turn them into on-demand classes so that you're building up a library of content that you can kind of, and they give you a white label app. So you've now got an app that you can give to your clients and say, my studio, my gym has an app. We've got a bunch of workouts on there. Maybe we will or won't do live workouts. They have features that let you do, one-to-one coaching. So you can kind of, jump in and do a one-to-one coach. And they're actually integrating ASENSEI technology as well. So we're working with them right now so that any gyms or studios that see Forte, because, I'm expecting you don't have the IT budget of Peloton to go and build your own custom, strength training app. And, you don't want to either. But you can probably stand in front of a camera and, take people through a workout. Today we're going to do this. And so Forte handle all the rest. And with ASENSEI integrated, you get access to that technology. So that's how we're thinking about this part of the market, is like where they don't have an app, like who are the partners we work with in some more, bigger strength rooms, particularly where they're attached to athletic performance. They might be using other athlete management systems. I won't name any of them, but athlete management systems. And if you work with an AMS and you love the sound of ASENSEI, tell your AMS provider they should be integrating ASENSEI.
There you go. Yeah.
And we'll, because as a coach, isn't it great if you can open that AMS and like all the reps, all the loads, what rep did they start to fatigue because we saw tempo reduce, or we saw form start to break down. Your form is a great indicator of fatigue.
For sure.
So there's a lot of data that we can kind of punch into an AMS automatically.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the ability to really individualize and customize things kind of
Right.
on the fly and make it a little bit more scalable, right? In the sense that, if I'm doing a small group, sometimes it's hard to watch all of the people. But like you said, this one person on this day, they didn't tell me, but, their hip is bothering them and now that's impacting their movement. So anything we can do to give ourselves a competitive advantage, if you will, but just anything we can do to better service our clients.
Exactly.
This sounds like a really cool way to do that.
Exactly, and that's our goal. That's our goal. And yeah, and we did some work a year or so back now with Intel, and they had a multi-camera system that can be installed. 5 or 6 cameras in a facility where we can watch the whole class at once. Where we can
That's
basically
cool.
capture the skeleton of the whole class at once. And the use case there is, when I coached karate at University of Edinburgh. We had a big club. Like the start of the year, we would have like 150 students in that hall.
Oh
And
my
like,
gosh.
it whittled down over the year. But even towards the end of the year, I was never teaching a class of less than 50 and usually kind of closer to
Oh my
100
gosh.
students, right? So
Yeah.
I can't safely teach 100 people karate without
Right.
having assistant coaches there. So I always had at least 3 or 4 coaches in the room, walking the floor. We'd split the class up into groups and we'd all teach a different group. But I had the luxury of, one of my coaches might come over to me like, hey, Stephen, I'm spotting that the blue belts are all making this mistake on their front kick. Maybe you want to teach that drill that you do, the one that, teaches them to pop their hip. Got a drill in my head. And so, like, I'm even imagining the coach, Paul Skelding, that would come and tell me that. And so, what's the digital version of Paul? And so when you've got that kind of multi-camera setup and you've got the ability to watch every athlete in the room at once, now, Coach Mike at the front of the room gets a little notification on his watch or on his phone. It's like, hey, 4 or 5 people are all making this mistake. So now you might still teach to the class, but you're teaching to something that would most benefit most of the class, or it might be individualized. It might be, Steven's over on the concept 2 over there, and he's going to put his back out unless you go this push not pull. And so there's lots of ways you can use that tech.
Dude, this is the last thing I'll say about this, but as far as use case goes, where I could see massive implications for this is high school strength and conditioning. Because so many, and I don't think it's like this nationwide, but especially here in the Midwest, it's huge.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, there might be 60 kids in a classroom and maybe 2 coaches. So now, especially, can you imagine in that environment, you got 60 kids and hey, all these 5 that are doing their high pulls or whatever, they're not doing it right. Or all these 6 that are over here in the corner squatting, they're not doing it right. Like just the power of just being able to observe more, to be able to be more targeted in our communication. That's really cool. Really cool.
100% agree. And I'll give you a slightly analogous example. So we have another customer called Amp Health. And the CEO at Amp Health, he was one of the original connected fitness guys at Under Armour. So he kind of went from the fitness world via Amazon Health to be CEO of Amp Health. And they serve the industrial athlete. The industrial athlete is the 80% of American workers who are in a physically demanding job with no depth. Right.
Yes.
And I just recently did a podcast. Sam and I did a podcast together where we kind of, which I'll share with you because he was super interesting in it. Me not so much. But Sam talked about he'd just been on the factory floor of one of his customers, and like you've got people like lifting heavy boxes, twisting, turning, lifting in extreme cold, like sub 40 extreme cold.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Right. And so. You want to talk about the ratio of coach to student in a high school. The ratio there is like 1 to 500, right? There's 500 people on the floor. And so some of the things they're doing that I think should live in the world of high school athletes as well is we can now, the movement assessment, the smart warm-up in the gym that I just told you about, that's a movement screen for high school athletes. That's a movement screen for the industrial athletes. And it takes no time to do at all. It's not your functional movement, test where you have to hold a pose and wait and measure and you do a 3-minute warm up, and we've seen enough to know your hip flexion, your ankle flexion, your shoulder flexion, your asymmetries, your balance, blah blah blah. And what that allows that trainer with 500 industrial athletes to do is stratify risk. It's like these are the 20 people in the organization that are most likely to benefit from me intervening and giving them a program.
Yes.
And so I think as a high skill athlete coach, yes, it would be great if a sensei was watching every athlete do every rep and every push and every pull. And we will be in that future one day. But first, what if you just had your athletes, take turns to warm up? Like, let's say you've got 50 athletes, and let's say you've got 7 athletes in 7 days in a week. In a week, you've movement screened every athlete once a week, and you can start to surface that population of, like, to my example earlier, this kid seems to have poor shoulder flexion right now, and so let's not have them doing too much overhead load. And we work on that, or let's give them some movement prep to do after class. That's going to help them with that. So, crawl, walk, run. Start with simple stuff, and I think smart warm-ups and movement assessments are a really good place for people to think about starting.
No, I love it. It just reminds me when we were running boot camps at our gym, we would do a class on Saturdays. We called it Learn to Burn, right? And that's all it was, right? We're just trying to tease out who's a good fit for this class.
Right.
And stratifying risk, right? This person can absolutely go in and do most of the things.
Right.
This one subsect, they need to do something else first.
Right.
So I love that idea. And I think as a business owner, that's being smart, right? And doing your due diligence, because not everybody's ready to come in day one and do all the cool things that they expect to be able to do.
Right. Yeah. I would always tell people, I'm going to teach you how to kick to the head in your first karate class. It was my recurring joke that I still think is funny. But I would teach people how to do a hip throw and throw someone on the ground. I was like, and now you can kick them in the head, right?
Yeah. I love it.
But let me actually quickly tell you about another customer, because I did a series of podcasts with some of my customers.
Yeah.
And this one was like really fun to listen to the customer as well. So Jamie Monroe, former U.S. Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 1 combat medic, and he has a company now called ReadyFit. And he saw the problem of military fitness tests, right? You have to drive 2 hours to some, facility where you're going to stand around on the track and wait for your turn to do your fitness test and get a pass-fail score. Do you meet the physical fitness requirements for the military? And obesity is a national security problem. So Jamie set out to solve that. And so they have an app. You can download the app right now at readyfit.com. And you can take any of the military fitness tests. And you can see the test. You can train for it with a sensei. So it was super interesting, for me on this project. Like, every branch of the military has a different opinion on a push-up and how it should be performed and how it should be scored. In some, you're allowed to let your body sag so long as it doesn't touch the ground. In others, like the SEALs, as soon as your body sags, you're out. You have to keep a strict core. But with a sensei, they can train you for the test. You can take the test as many times you like at home until you're happy that this is probably your score you want to submit. Then you take a test and you submit it. And when you submit it, you get your certificate back digitally with your score. And you can dispute the score if you think you did a longer plank or you think you did more push-ups in the sense he was too tough on you. You can submit it. And today, it's trust but verify. Someone at the military will watch back the test. But you start thinking about that for CrossFit or High Rocks or all these other modalities. Is you can kind of screen athletes, and again, for gym owners, I think these become good lead magnets. Give people a little test to do to come and join your burn week.
Yes, I love it. Okay, what's next for ASENSEI? I would love to hear where this is going. Obviously, you don't have to give away all the secrets, but where do you see yourselves in I don't even want to say 10 years, the next 3 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, a company I admire and, love to use as an analogy is Dolby Audio, right? You can't get a TV that's not, it's like, do you want the TV with Dolby Atmos or do you want the TV without Dolby Atmos? Which one do you want? You want the one with Dolby Atmos. And
absolutely.
So, that's our goal for ASENSEI, is that we are an ingredient technology that when people are looking at 2 connected strength products, or they're looking at a power block adjustable dumbbell and they're looking at another adjustable dumbbell, it's like, I want the one that's powered by ASENSEI, because I know that means I'm going to get form coaching and feedback and taught progressions and offered regressions, and I don't have to log everything. And so that's our goal for the company. We're just at the first innings, right, of the digital transformation of fitness. And we're the company that's out in front, leading the way on what movement recognition could be and should be and is. And so in fitness, the next 2 or 3 years, we really plan to dominate the category and just make sure that every fitness brand is thinking about why are we not working with ASENSEI to have our products powered. But also, we have an opportunity to do much more good in the world and just focus on the fitness market. So we're very focused right now on connected health and rehabilitation and prehabilitation. We've got customers delivering virtual PT. We have a customer that's super proud to be working with these guys. They're called Neurophoenix, and it's neuromuscular rehab for patients recovering from strokes.
Oh, wow.
To recover motor control. So, I feel very good about the fact that we're an ingredient in helping people there. And then brick and mortar. I want these smart warm-up mirrors on the wall of gyms.
That's cool.
My kind of catchphrase is I want to turn floor space into wall space. I want you standing in front of the wall. Whether you're learning to swing a kettlebell correctly or use a dumbbell properly or just warm up and be given additional movement prep, I think every facility should have a mirror or a tablet that's helping their members get an element of your experience in a gym that you're paying a membership for shouldn't be worse than the experience you can have in your own garage with your phone. So it's incumbent on facilities to start thinking about, we need to introduce the technology that people could alternatively use at home and not come here. So that's our plan. I could talk tech and I could talk AI, but we've got tech for days. I think the focus is on just really get people to understand that every industry before us, fitness and healthcare is being digitally transformed, and you get to choose who you're going to be, and you don't want to be Blockbuster or BlackBerry or Nokia or Kodak. So embrace it, and go with it, and lead with it.
Yeah, I love it, man. Okay, big question time, my friend. Okay. If you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Stephen Webster one piece of advice, what would it be?
It's all going to be okay.
I like that. I've never heard that one before.
It's all going to be okay.
I love it. That's simple. I thought there was going to be more. I thought you were going to expand on that.
Listen, I'm sure it could, but I think. Yeah, let's just keep it at that. And it's philosophical enough. I think we can keep it at that. We've got all the resource we need or the capacity to find it, to do whatever we want to do and figure a path forward. So, I
like that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, last but not least, we've got our lightning round. So 4 fairly short questions. Your answer can be as long or short as you like. Number 1, talk to me about the martial arts background. And I wanted to go deeper earlier, but I'd love to hear more about it now. How did you do both karate and jiu-jitsu at such a high level? Because you were really high level in both, correct?
Yeah, I guess.
Are you being humble? Are you just being humble now?
I've got 8 black belts. I've got a 4th degree and 2 second degree black belts.
Oh my gosh.
There's no shortcut, right? If you want to get good at something, you got to get the reps in. I'm preaching to the choir. But you got to get the reps in. And so how did I get, better than my peers at it? I just did it more and I enjoyed it more and I was passionate about it. I wanted to be good at it. So that's number 1. I showed up. I remember only wanting to quit once. And telling my mom, it's I don't know if I want to do jiu-jitsu. And I can't thank her enough for the way she handled that. She was like, okay, then you do it for 4 more weeks and then you decide.
Okay. I like that.
And I've used that since. It's probably the most life-changing lesson my mum gave me was that, because if I'd quit, I wouldn't be sitting here right now doing what I'm doing. And I was just a kid that was 14 and my friends were hanging out at the park and I'm doing jiu-jitsu. And it's a week later, I was, I'd forgotten about that or I didn't care about being at the park. So no, to answer your question, I think you just got to find something you're passionate and put the time into it. But then I would also say it, I especially lots of people get to black belt and that's it, right? They're like, I'm a black belt now, I did it. Not to be too philosophical, but black belt is welcome to being a beginner. Now it's time to start learning. You've earned the kihon, the fundamentals. Now it's time to find who you are as a martial artist. And for that, being at University of Edinburgh, I was very fortunate that I could seek out good instructors and bring them to me. I could invite them to, it's do you want to come to Scotland? I'll pay for your flight, accommodation, take you out drinking and take you out for a meal and you can teach your passion for 2 days to 200 people. The answer was always yes.
Yeah.
So I brought some of the best instructors in the world to Edinburgh and got to know them and got to go and visit them where they were from and travel around the world teaching with them. And which probably leads me, it's always nice to have three things, right? So I'd say the third thing is martial arts taught me to learn by teaching.
Yes. That's
And
huge.
so, the name of our company, ASENSEI, I lean into it quite heavily. People think of the word sensei as meaning like master, or it's like it's honorific, and it's not. It's two characters. Sen and sei are two characters that basically mean a person before. So if you're a sensei, you're someone that's further ahead than someone else, or it's this kind of notion of legacy. And so to be a sensei just means that you're a little further along the journey than the people behind you, and you have the same obligation that the people ahead of you gave you, which is turn around and teach. And so
I love that.
That was like the sort of thinking behind the name of the company is like what I want to bring to the world is scaling that duty and that responsibility to pass on what you've learned to those that want to learn it from you. So.
Wow. Dude, that's a really cool answer and a really cool story. Like,
it was not a lightning answer. It was a lightning.
No, because I love that though. And I think I've taught interns basically since we've had a gym. And one of the exercises though I would always have them do on their first day or very early in the internship was I would have them do something they've done thousands of times, right? Foam roll, squat, bench press. Now I want you to go explain that in detail to one of your peers. And it's totally different because they've never coached it themselves.
Right.
And so I love that aspect of it. It's one thing to internalize it, know how to do it yourself. It's something totally different to take those ideas and those concepts and put them into somebody else.
I used to do that a lot. I used to do that a lot at University of Edinburgh. Like when I was coaching, I'd be like, "Hey, Simon, could you step up and can you teach the class? They're making this mistake on their hip throw. Could you talk about it and teach it?" And I would do that all the time. One, it's just good to, it's good engagement. You're not listening to me all the time and tuning me out.
Yes.
But to your point, two things I think. One is great for the person in the role of the teacher. It really forces them to, internalize the lessons. But sometimes it just takes someone else saying the same thing for the lesson to attach itself. And so there's a benefit there as well. So we should celebrate teachers. My mom was a teacher, and not just in jiu-jitsu. She taught at my school, which is why I started martial arts, because I got bullied because my mom was a teacher. So,
oh, man. Blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
Blessing and a curse. Okay.
The problem and the solution, yeah.
That's right. That's right. Number 2, did you have a favorite between the two?
So I was kind of the strictly ballroom of karate. So I was a black belt in jiu-jitsu before I started karate. I was pretty much almost a second degree black belt.
Oh, wow.
And then, oh my God, this is like a podcast of its own. So I'll give you the very brief version. As I started to learn karate, especially if you're familiar with kata or forms where you kind of do solo practice, I looked at those and I became part of a movement of like, what looks like blocks and punches and kicks and like fighting 10 people in different directions, it isn't that. It's actually, it was an encoding and a passing on of kind of secret teaching of like, this is how you do arm bars, and this is how you do ground fighting, and this is how you do choke, and this is how you do throws. And so me practicing jiu-jitsu, imagining I had my hands on somebody, suddenly started to look a lot like, this movement here is actually an arm bar. It's not stack your hands before you do this movement here. You were putting somebody into an arm bar. And that was a huge unlock. Suddenly I was like a second degree black belt in karate as well, because I knew I could see what all the movements were. So I was like this super controversial. I mean, it was no joke, strictly ballroom. Like people were like, he's not teaching karate, he's teaching jiu-jitsu, to which my answer was, but we're winning all the karate medals, aren't we? Like, so we're right. And so that problem, and I used to say that to my club. I was like, let the score speak for itself. And what you want. And I think one of the things I'm really proud of is we changed the way karate got taught, and we changed the way people competed, because they had to learn what we were learning, because our team was just so damn good. Like we taught things to white belts that most people wouldn't learn at black belts. Like, well, we're sweeping everyone on the floor. It's a little karate kid, but we're sweeping everyone on the floor. My white belts are doing it because I teach it day one. and you're not
Yeah.
teaching that till second dan. Well, we're winning the tournament because a sweep with a punch, that's 3 points right there. That's
Yeah. I love it.
so
I love
yeah.
it. No, that's cool, man.
Better
That's
as you do. Yeah.
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. Okay, number 3. I'm really interested in this one as well. Totally different angle. What's been the greatest obstacle that you've had in getting your business off the ground so far? And then how have you gone about overcoming it? Because I think people always assume, oh man, 10 years, you've been killing it. But you also know they don't always see the internal struggles and strife,
Yeah.
and they don't understand what it takes to get through that. So anything that comes to mind there.
I mean, the biggest obstacle is other people's conviction. Like, you need the conviction of others, right? Whether that's hiring people to join you and help you, whether that's getting funding from investors, because you can't do this, for 5 years without, paying the people that are doing it.
Right.
This has been a theme that's ran throughout my career. Is I've always been drawn to imagine if, not, I'm not the person that's like pessimistic about technology or reluctant to change. I'm always kind of like, imagine if.
Right.
But when something becomes an extreme, it becomes the opposite. And so the opposite of imagine if is everyone else is like, I don't see it. And so there's a great phrase that I've stolen and used often, like, never mistake a clear line of sight for a short distance. And I think that's always been my challenge, is certainly in technology, and especially in the intersection of technology and sport, like my two passions, I've had a very clear line of sight for 12 or 13 years about what the future would look like. But it's only been in the last 2 years, maybe, that I'm not trying to convince people of it. I'm telling them how to do it, not trying to convince them that it's going to happen. And so,
gotcha.
To answer the second part of your question, you've got to have conviction in yourself. You've got to really understand your own internal north and be willing to be wrong as well. With one of our military customers, I heard a great phrase the other day. They talked about a kill metric, and it's not the number of kills. It's like, if this is true, kill the project. Stop for, don't just know what success looks like. Put a number on what failure looks like, or put a metric on what failure looks like. So you don't waste any time kind of pushing too far. So that's what I would say, is have a really strong sense of conviction, but check in with yourself on a regular basis, and that probably means being surrounded by people you trust. I think lots of people have opinions, but you have to find people where you're like, if that person tells me something different to what I believe. My CTO is a great example of that. Bill. He's a very orthogonal thinker, sees the world beautifully and differently. And, anytime Bill gives me pause, I pause hard. Because, you
need those people.
Yeah, you do.
You need those people.
Find your tribe.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, last but not least, what's next for Stephen Webster?
Breakfast. What time is it? 1 p.m.
That's right.
You know what? I would love this to be the last company I ever work for. It's I'm super excited about the product. I think it should exist in the world as an ingredient in as many kind of health. Nothing would be prouder for me than our technology is touch and stroke patients. It's helping keep the nation secure by getting people ready for the military. It's keeping people's mental health, because fitness is something that they found, or yoga is something that they found. I mean, there's so much good movement is medicine, right?
Absolutely.
And so there's so much good comes from, if we can just get more people not just moving well, but finding the joy in it. That's a life's work right there. So what's next for me is just making sure we can keep doing what we're doing here and get it to scale.
I love it. Well, Stephen, I truly appreciate your time. I know you got a ton going on. Where can my listeners find out more about you, ASENSEI, and everything that you're working on?
Yeah, I would say if you're on LinkedIn, that's a great place to find us. We just, especially because we're kind of a B2B company. I know LinkedIn's not like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok,
sure.
But find ASENSEI on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn. My VP of Sales and Partnerships, Blake, he's a former, master's in kinesiology and has trained as many athletes as all of us. Former Vicon as well, so motion capture world. Blake and I in particular, like we're pretty prolific at like, sharing what we're thinking and what are we cooking in the lab and here's the technology. And we love to talk about our customers and show off what they're doing. So if you're excited about that, and you'll find out what podcasts we're on and our customers, and that's a great place to keep up with us. So find us there and you'll find us everywhere.
Perfect. I'll make sure I get links to all those in the show notes so they can find you. But again, Stephen, truly appreciate your time, man. This was awesome.
No, likewise. Thanks so much.